So yeah, welcome. Good afternoon. My name is Lauren Denyer. I'm a WSET educator and also a Cava educator as well. I will be generally hosting this Cava event for you this afternoon. I am joined by panelists in the panel. I'll get our panelists to introduce themselves. So we have Dr. Jamie Goode, who I'm sure you're familiar with. We have Roger Canals, who is a Cava producer from Van Zeltep, and we've also got Caterina Soares, who is from Huveian Camps. So I'll leave it to them to introduce themselves properly. So after you, Jamie.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jamie Goode. I'm a wine journalist, lecturer, and judge and book author. I've got lots of interests, but one of my interests is in sparkling wines. And I've recently become very interested in the revolutions that are happening in Cava, in Dio Cava. And I did a visit there fairly recently with a major tasting, visited lots of producers, and came away really impressed.
Thank you, Jamie. And Roger?
Hello, I'm Roger. I'm the export manager from Vinzelcep, but also I'm winemaker. I work with the company also in different technical departments. But finally, we are a winery that we are small. We are focused not with the quantity, so normally more in the quality of our area. So we had experience for more of 50 years, and I think that we can explain a lot of things today also.
Thank you. And over to you, Caterina.
Hello, I'm Caterina. I work in the wine business for more than 15 years, so it makes me feel a bit old, but I have experience with wines from all over the world. I work here with Cava for some years now. Huveian Camps has more than 200 years in the viticultural history. Actually, we are neighbors from the winery of Roger, Canals. We're just next to each other, actually two neighbors. So it's really one of the best places to produce premium cavas, as we both do. We focus a lot in the terroir and having the best expression from the wines from this region. I think, well, Huveian Camps is a very well-known brand and family owned. I'm also WSET 3 certificate. So I hope I can, help you with any doubts you have today. Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks everyone. So yeah, we'll get to learn a lot more about your wineries and those cavas that you produce as we go through this webinar. So just a little bit of housekeeping before we get going with that. So the format of this is I'm going to do a little introduction on Dio Cava, look at some of the new, some of the changes that have been made quite recently. And Dr. Jamie Goode has been there very recently as well, so he knows exactly what's going on, the up-to-date information, as will those that work there. So as we go through this, there will be some discussion, which I've got some outline topics that we'll be mainly discussing. And then if those of you have any questions, you can pop them in the Q&A. So I will be looking at those questions in the Q&A as we go along. If it's relevant to answer them, then I will try and direct them to the right person, or they'll be answered towards the end of this webinar. So just briefly a timeline, so I won't read all of this out, but we can see that we've got quite a history here, with 1872 being a very key date. So the first traditional method sparkling wines produced in what is kind of known as the birthplace of Cava, the San Sadoni da Noia. And then moving on a few years, the grape varieties that are planted now are really established then following the issue of phylloxera, which in some ways helped to create an identity within the Cava wines. So 1959 is when the word was actually used to denote these wines, meaning cellar, so where the wines are generally kept, where they're on the lees for that traditional method production. And then the Consejo Regulador they were set up, so they're there to kind of monitor the quality and place those restrictions and regulations that are necessary to provide the quality that we expect from Cava. We had the definition and limitations in 1986, and then sort of more what we recognise of the regulations were more established in 1991, and then very recently we've had some really helpful, I believe, plans to look at the segmentation, zoning, and the new labels and what we will see on our bottles to give us an idea of the maturity of the wines, where they come from, etc. So we'll explore that in a little bit more detail and talk to the producers as well about how that's affected what they do, or if it has at all. We can see that Cava actually over the last year or so has increased in its sales. So, you know, this is a big, you know, there's a lot of producers, but there's also not just producers. There are growers, there are people who produce the musts, the base wines, and then there's sort of, and then continuing on with that, we've got some that do everything, some that do some things, and we'll look at what that means as well for the labelling terms. But, you know, huge amount of grapes produced, as we can see, and then almost 250 million bottles that we've had for sales from 2022. So a really good increase of almost coming up to 5%. So on 2021. So you know, sparkling wine is a growing market, but we have had quite a difficult time, and to see that increase is really promising. So where it's sold, so we've got quite a lot is exported, I think coming up to almost around 70%. The main countries being sort of USA, Germany, Belgium, and the United Kingdom, but we'll discuss a bit later where emerging markets are and other potential sales for Cava. And we can see as well that they've got this the category Guarda Superior, which is a kind of a newly sort of labelled category. This has been existing, but it's now more formally labelled. Those wines with more aging and now made organically have grown quite significantly as well. So these are the labels that we will be starting to see more and more of on the backs of the bottles, and these are now really about the aging requirements, and what's really important, and we will discuss further, is organic practice. So you can see on this first label here, so this is a Cava de Guarda. So Cava de Guarda, so not superior yet. Cava de Guarda, 9 months minimum time on the in the bottle there, between the time of adding the for the second fermentation until disgorgement. And you can also see actually on these labels that they've got a zone. So we've got Comtats de Barcelona. So we'll look at the zones in just a moment. So we've got a more specific place evident on the bottle, and we've got the aging requirement on the bottle there as well. So that's for your Cava de Guarda. Now Cava de Guarda Superior is now moving into longer aging, and now from 2025 that has to be 100% organic in the vineyard. So you can see that the minimum requirement for our Reserva is, and if you're familiar with the Reserva term, it used to be less time than this. So the amount of months has gone up, which is the minimum requirement for aging on the lees, and that's now 18 months. And then we've got the Gran Reserva, which is 30 months. So you can see that, and you can see the different colours of the labels there. So this category, the Cava de Guarda Superior, we're looking at 100% organic in the vineyard, a maximum of 10,000 kilos per hectare of grapes. And so these are very closely regulated, these wines. We've also got a couple of other labels that we're going to be seeing more of on bottles as well. So we've got the Cava de Paraje. So the Cava de Paraje is a single estate cava with a minimum of 36 months. on the lees there, so that's even longer aging, and these are known for having more of a kind of a uniqueness, a real identity, because obviously they're coming from a particular site. And we've also got the Elaborado Integral, and the Elaborado Integral is when everything is done by that producer. So the whole cava production, you know, they are pressing the grapes and they're vinifying, and they're doing that on their own property. And both producers that we have today have both of those in their ranges. At the moment, it's for Cava de Paraje, there are around 6 producers producing Cava de Paraje, and for the Elaborado Integral, that is 15. So these are not widely available generally as cavas, so it's going to be really interesting to discover more about them and get to hopefully taste them as we generally learn more about cava and experience it more. So we've got some zones, and we've got some more sort of official zones. We have, well, 95% of cava is generally from Penedès, so we're going to have a huge proportion of producers around there. So we're looking at the Comtats de Barcelona, and within that in particular, the Vals d'Anoia Foix. But then we've got other areas in Catalonia as well where the wine is being produced, and these labels, these sort of subzones can be put onto the labels. But you will notice that the wider zones, like Comtats de Barcelona, will be on those labels. We've got the Valle d'Ebro, which you can see. We've got 2 sort of subzones there, the Alto Ebro and the Valle de Cieso. We've got down in the south, right down in the south over to the southwest, we've got the Viñedos de Almendralejo, which is just one area there. So not much cava is produced there, but what's quite interesting is the fact that we have these diverse parts of Spain where this wine is coming from. So we'll discuss a little bit about that later. And then at the moment, we've got an area near Valencia, has been referred to as the Zone de Levante, but that's not an official term for it. So that's still in discussion, I believe. So yeah, so we've got these areas within Spain, but most of what we're going to be experiencing will probably be from the Comtats de Barcelona zone. So these are the general things we're going to discuss this afternoon, and I've noticed that there are some questions. I'll look at them in just a moment, and if there's something that I know we're planning on discussing, then I won't push for it to be answered right away, and hopefully you'll get your answer as we go through. Otherwise, I'll be very happy to share those questions. But yeah, we're going to be looking at the effects of the recent changes, this commitment to sustainability, because I do think it is quite unprecedented for a region or a body to sort of put in place these organic practices, but we can have a further discussion on that, and if there is other parts of the world where that's happening. Then the support for that within the cava community in terms of production and those working in the vineyards, and it seems that it has been growing. Organic production has been growing anyway, so we'll see if that's something that that is generally going to be the case. Talk a little bit about that in more detail, maybe about the stylistic differences around the cava zoning. And a little bit more about those 2 labelling terms that we haven't seen so much of that are fairly recent, with the Cava de Paraje and the Elaborado Integral. And we've noticed that within the Reserva and Gran Reserva, we have quite long aging, and Cava de Paraje as well, and see if that is something that is going to a style that we can get to know a bit more about with reference to the aging of those wines. So I will hand over then to the panel, if that's okay. And my first question is, what changes and or adaptations have producers needed to make since the new zoning, segmentation and labelling regulations came in? And I think that one is probably best for Roger and Katarina.
Well, in my case, like in Juve camps, we are 100% organic for a long time now, so there was no change in respect to that. like 90% of our, only one product is not Guarda Superior, which is a rosé. So all of them are Guarda Superior, so they would have to be organic, but we were already organic. Also, our Reserva white is more than 18 months. It's 24 months. So we didn't have to do any change also in terms of winemaking. So we already fulfilled the requirements. The things that we had to change were more about the labels and the text in the labels. So you can see in every case with the new labels when introduced, you will see Cava and the sub-region we're from, and then also in the text we mentioned the region we are from. Well, so for us, more or less, it's this. I don't know if Roger wants to add something.
Yeah, no, in our case it's similar because we were before certificated by organic. Finally, the good thing of that is that we can have all the information in just in one label. In our case also, we don't make any Guarda wine, Cava, sorry, just Guarda Superior. So also to can represent our Cavas in general in the market. I think that is a little bit better for the positioning of our Cavas in this case. And finally, Cava, the thing is that it's not the same Cava make it in our area in Vall de Noia Foix, because the climate that we have, the weather is different than in other zones, and if we can have this in the label, I think that is a good thing for us, because we hope that and we like a lot our region, and we think that it's very special. So finally, if it's required to put in the label for us, I think that is better, because Spain is big.
That is true. Spain is very big.
Yeah, no.
That's really interesting, actually, to know that there are some styles that you don't make and others that actually you've been making like that anyway for quite some time. So obviously it's going to affect different producers differently. But in terms of how you have been practicing, I suppose, and what your impressions are of where you are based and maybe wider, but what is the commitment to sustainability, and how does that work? And maybe Jamie, you've got some views on that as well.
I don't know if we should answer, or Jamie, sorry. Yeah. So, well, if you want, I can say something about us. Commitment to sustainability is very important for us, and I think for everyone and in all sectors around. In terms of GWCAMS, organic viticulture is one part, but not only. One thing that we focus a lot is in the terroir, and as a back objective is that to have no change in the landscape, to preserve the landscape and all the diversity, also the diversity in animals and plants there are. So some examples, it's more than 50% of the state is actually woods, and it's not farms, and it's integrated in the vineyards. It's not like wood is there and then the vineyards on the side. So all this integration is important. The thing of being organic and don't use these pesticides is also important, to not alienate any kind of animal or insects. So to have the less change in everything as we can. We also do regenerative viticulture. It's difficult for me to but I think Jamie can say something about this as well. We have vines from more than 80 years old, and we believe that vines can live forever. And if you do the respect for the plant, for the cycle, you can have really good old vineyards and good quality wines. Well, I think I will let them also say something about this.
Yeah, I also want to add something. For us also is very important, this part in the vineyards, because finally we are finally at the wine, what we drink is finally, if we put pesticides or something in the soil, finally these pesticides or these chemicals will come to the grape. After that, you press, you drink that when it's cava. So it's very important work by organic, and also not just for the people, not just for the customers, also for the people that works in. For example, I always told that my grandfather that was working for more of 30 years working with chemicals every day in the vineyard is the worst part for him. I think that is the worst generation of the history of the viticulture, and I think that now if we can change that, will be better for everyone. And also in our case, for example, we changed it how we work. Now we are working in the winery just 6 to 3 p.m. To can use the solar panels that we have in the winery, and finally we work just we try to work as much as possible with just natural energy, and don't need to use any other systems. With the solar panels, we are working very well, and we can get the winery in perfect conditions and works finally with natural energy.
I'd add also that I think it's fantastic that there's such an emphasis here on the vineyard, and that this is being made official as part of the rules. And I think this is people could say, well, is organics the optimal way to farm all the time? I think that's a separate discussion. I think the main thing is that consumers are really tired of greenwashing, and so many sustainability schemes basically are greenwashing. So big companies get together and they form what looks like a scientifically derived sustainability scheme, but basically it's just rubber stamping what they're already doing with a few little tweaks here and there. But this is actually, you can't cheat with organics. It's very clear what organic farming means. And it's also, whereas consumers don't understand sustainability, they know what organics means. They're familiar with it. It's the one way of green farming that I think has a resonance with not just informed consumers, but non-informed consumers, because they're used to going to supermarkets and seeing organic vegetables. And so there's some sense of you don't go into a supermarket and see sustainable vegetables. And it's something that has a resonance, I think, with consumers. So I think this is really encouraging. And I also love that you've mentioned regenerative approaches, because I think organics takes you most of the way in terms of regenerative farming. And then you can start thinking about how to introduce biodiversity into the vineyard. And once you've got other things growing in the vineyard, this is really important, because they do what's called ecosystem services. When you've got an agro ecosystem that's working functionally, then that reduces the inputs that you have to do, because that ecosystem kind of balances itself out. And the other point I'd mention is that, obviously there's a big concern now about climate chaos, and particularly the warming trends, the drier seasons. And when I was there in May in the vineyards, it hadn't rained for ages, and some of the vines that just started growing were really struggling. And I think what's organics plus biodiversity, regenerative farming does is it increases the resilience of the vineyards, because once you have other things growing in the vineyard, and especially over winter, if you have good cover crops growing, then you can do things like mulch them over the summer. You increase the organic material in the soil. That increases the ability of the soil to retain water. Also, having other things growing in the soil increases the ability of water to infiltrate the soil. So you've got this benefit there. And then if you manage to get your cover, it's obviously challenging when you've got a very dry summer. You don't want to compete too much with the vines for water. But then if you can mulch or roll the crops, the cover crops, they can form a sort of a mulch matting, and then that protects the soils from really high temperatures, because in the summer soil temperatures can get really high. So all these things working together, finding intelligent approaches to how to work the vineyards, I think bodes really well, not just for the sustainability of the vineyards, but also for great quality. And so I think it's fantastic that the Guarda Superior is going fully organic. It also gives you a brilliant talking point when you're talking about the region, because no other region I know has done this.
Yeah, that's something I wondered about. And just following on from that, Jamie, you mentioned about sort of the consumer side of things. And what's your take on what sustainability means in the UK market and how important it is? I mean, you mentioned that sustainability as a word to sell things doesn't seem to be what we're using, but you know, what's your view on that?
Well, two things. First of all, I think if you can go to consumers and say, you know, if you see this label, Guarda Superior, it means the farming has been all organic. That's a powerful message because it addresses two things. It addresses the green nature of the move, you know, the fact that it's making these vineyards sustainable, but also it's changing the dialogue about Cava. Because many people might just have, in the past, may have associated, especially if they shop in supermarkets in the UK, Cava is often the cheapest traditional method sparkling wine you'll find. And bizarrely, Cava is often cheaper than Prosecco. So it's this message that Cava isn't like a cheap substitute. It's not a wine you buy when you can't afford the others. This is a wine with its own characteristics, its own intrinsic value. And I think once you start having that sort of conversation with customers, then they start to think, wait a minute, there's something happening here. Maybe I was wrong in my perception of Cava. Maybe this is something we need to pay attention to. And I think that's a powerful message. So it addresses both the green aspects, but also it's a conversation that changes the perception of the region.
Yeah, thank you. No, it's a powerful message. I agree. And why? And I don't know, as we've not got a representative from the DO here, but what you might know about this. You know, why did the DO make this bold decision to move to organic production? And what do you think are the drivers behind it?
I don't know for sure why they did it, but I'm assuming that with all these measures, you know, that you introduced so well at the beginning, which I think are really very positive messages. This is a quality region for sparkling wine, and giving people these, you know, obviously it will take time for these messages to sink through, and some people won't ever get to grips with them. But I think that this is something that, you know, is a suite of measures that is changing the communication about Cava. And I think it's you know, fighting that old perception that this is, you know, cheap fizz. It's, you know, everything about it is cutting costs, cutting corners, to saying, well, actually, this is quite serious. This is worthy of attention. And these are the clear messages we have on the bottle. And that, you know, if you want to know them, you can know them. It's all there, the information. It's very transparent. And so I think the motivation is simply to change people's, you know, it's the right thing to do, I think, to farm well. You look at the regions, well, I'm talking about the Comtats de Barcelona now, obviously. I haven't been to the other, you know, and that's most of the vineyards. The soils there are fantastic. This is a really good vineyard region. This is a good place to grow wine grapes. It's not like, you know, flatland potato fields. You know, this is proper vineyard soils. So I think just emphasizing this and emphasizing the quality aspects, I think, is really powerful.
And I suppose this is probably more focused for you, Roger and Katerina, and probably you've sort of answered this before a little bit, but, you know, have the producers generally got behind this? And you know, was this a welcome decision?
Yeah, Roger, I don't know if you want to speak at the same time. I think this is, well, you talk about the bold decision. For me, it's not so bold. Actually, it's natural, and it could have been done actually before. As Roger was saying, they are also organic for a long time already, and it's I think also different from other regions in the world. We have a lot of sun, it's quite dry environment, so it's not so difficult to do it ecologic actually. And it's Also, this helps to have a more identity profile of Cava regarding other regions. As Jamie was saying, it's just not a cheap option. We have our own identity, and being also organic allows us to have a more to express better also the terroir and the grapes and the soil, the climate, or the origin that we focus as well. So I think it's something that if you look as especially mid-term and long-term decision, is obvious. It's not something bold, or I think everyone welcome in general.
Yes, I think exactly the same of Katarina. The good thing that we have here in our region is that the weather that we have is good to do the organic, to work by organic. We have not a lot of rains. Also depend of the year, because with the change of climate, we are getting every time more difficult to can prevent the weather of every year. Everything is changing. For example, in 2020, we had the double of the normal rains that we have a normal year. And for example, in our case, we lose it the 65% of all the production that we had in SPH. So it was horrible. So finally, we need to speak about also the risk that is work by organic. Work by organic is not everything good every year, but you have risks. But I think that we need to accept this risk, because I think that this is the right way to go. And a normal year, normally you have not these problems. Okay, and finally, for us, it's important to keep going with this mentality. And I think that for Cava in the future will be amazing, because I think that the weather is not going to have more rains in general. Every year is more dry. So work by organic and can control without chemicals the vineyards, with the knowledge that we have right now and the experience. We work more in the prevent than not act. No, and finally, if we can prevent a lot of things that can happen in the vineyards, we don't need the chemicals. That's my opinion.
Yeah, especially if we're talking about quality wines, not focus on the volume, as also the wines also that Roger is talking. If you focus on the quality and not the volumes, organic, it's very important. If you have very stressed about the volumes, have to guarantee to supply supermarkets big volumes is more difficult, I understand. To do that. For us, it's not a problem. I think also for Roger.
No, thank you for that. And actually, I've got a follow-on question, which maybe you want maybe have some anecdotal evidence of. But it's saying, has the Cava de Guarda category been well received? And I think they mean Guarda Superior has been well received by those producers that were not already farming organically, considering that they have until 2025 to transition. So is there anything that you know with regards to that? Any insights?
Yeah, I think I just maintain my comment. I think if you are a producer that has a commitment with volumes, with big supermarkets on a year basis, it will be more difficult for you to comply with this. That would be my own comment.
I mean, it has grown, the organic farming, and has definitely grown quite a lot anyway in the last few years. So whether that is a response to knowing that these there's going to be these requirements, or just like you say, you know, it is a part of the world where organic farming is achievable, and it does mean that we have it does lend itself to better quality generally anyway. So another question. I think this is I don't know if this is a question or a statement actually. So they're saying that Corpinat is 100% organic from when they started. Classic Penedès is 100% organic. By 2025, all DO Penedès grapes have to be organic. Okay, it's now 60% certified organic. Is that the case? I think it's just the new labeling terms for some of the breakaway groups have always been more focused on organic, and from their their beginnings. Ooh. Katerina, you look like you're talking, but I can't hear you.
No, sorry, I was trying to understand the question. What is the question?
I don't think it's a question. I think it's more of a statement. So
as a statement.
But I mean, the thing is, like we've just mentioned, really, you know, there's been a lot of organic cava production, so it's just a way of formalizing it. My general observations have been. I don't know if anyone else wants to.
I think in the future, and in all regions around the world, we will have to be organic. It will not be something differentiated. It will be the way to go. I think, as I think Roger was saying about his grandfather, the problem in the wine industry in terms of that is like when exports were exploding, no, in the 90s, where all the importers, they have to be a lot of volume, so there was using a lot of chemics, and that destroyed what was, you know, a category of fine wine. But if you talk about always fine wine and things, that we need to go to the other and going back some steps and doing the right things. And I think
we're talking about a region that produces 250 million bottles a year. So, you know, I think great steps to look at a proportion of that in terms of moving towards organic farming. So I think in terms of practical terms for the producers, what are the implications of that? Or have we? I think we've probably discussed most of this, but if there's anything else you wanted to add, or Jamie, if you've got any views.
I think that the challenges of organics maybe not so difficult in certainly in most of the vineyards I've seen, because you've got reasonably wide road spacing. You've got, you know, the really time-consuming tricky bit is actually in the vine row itself, you know, where the vines, and I think there's plenty of technology now for dealing with weeds in those zones. I think what I'd like to see is more discussion about how can producers keep more growth in the vineyard more of the time, because when it comes to farming regeneratively or in a sensible, intelligent way, you don't want to have bare earth. Bare earth is horrible because it's when you've got nothing growing there, then you haven't got any, you know, you're not feeding the soil microlife with the exudates from the plant roots that are growing there. So plant roots generally give up to around 30 to 40% of their photosynthase back into the soil, because what they're doing is they're trying to feed those microbial communities, most specifically the mycorrhizal interactions, because what the mycorrhizae do is they increase the plant root zone by so much, and they enable the roots of the vines to find more mineral ions, they find more water, and they increase the roots, you know, exploration of the soil just massively. And so really what you want to do in terms of viticulture is, organics is important, but then avoiding bare soil as much as you can. And I think one of the tendencies in many of these dry arid regions has been to over-till. I mean, you go to some regions and they've got bare soil even in the winter, which is a disaster. There's no reason not to be growing stuff there over winter. During the growing season, it takes a particular sort of management if you want anything growing there when you're in a very arid zone where it doesn't rain much over the whole summer. But I think these sorts of discussions, I think, would be very interesting in any wine region. I think the big advantage that these Cava regions have is that there's a very low downy mildew pressure. And downy mildew is the tricky one to farm organically against, because you need to use copper. There are basically no alternatives to using copper if you've got a high downy mildew pressure. And the last thing you want to be putting on your vines and your soils, if you want to encourage soil life, is copper, because it's toxic to microbes. So that's the challenge for damper regions. But for the Cava regions, low downy mildew pressure means that you need to use very little copper. Therefore, organics is actually quite sustainable. It's just a question of preserving that soil structure, because over-tilling also damages the soil structure, as well as you know, defeating the object of, you know, having things growing there, because you oxidize the soil organic material when you turn the soil too much. I mean, it looks pretty, it looks really healthy to turn the soil, but it's really bad for the soil microbes. So I think that's the kind of the big challenge, is finding the optimum, most sustainable way of farming. But as I said, organics gets you most of the way there, and it's so encouraging to see a region kind of focusing on that. And I hope that you know, and the other thing is, I do think there'll be an upside in terms of grape quality where people switch to organics, and that's only going to be good.
Thank you. I mean, I was asked, had a question that I didn't read out, but was kind of asking a little bit about the stylistic, the styles that are created. So it's quite a good point to kind of think about some of those now. And one of the things that people would have noticed that maybe they weren't so knowledgeable about before is the fact that we do have these areas in Spain where we're growing grapes for cavas. Obviously, a lot of that in the Comtat de Barcelona, but we're looking down sort of around Valencia, around Ebro Valley, for example. And you may know more than I do. I've tasted a few of different cavas from different places, but you know, what are these stylistic differences between the cavas in different zones? I mean, I can talk about my experience very briefly, in that obviously different grapes are being grown in different zones. So for example, a lot of Macabeo is grown in the other zones, as well as Chardonnay in particular. In the hotter parts, we're seeing more Garnacha as well. So of course, just the grape varieties themselves are going to impact the styles of the wines. We know that in Catalunya, Charolais is a really, really valued grape variety, and that really gives those wines an identity from the Comtat de Barcelona. But yeah, we've got different stylistic differences, probably to do with a little bit the ripeness of the grapes, potentially the acidity there as well, from different places. But from your own tasting or visiting regions, just throw this to all of the panel, what are your views? And is there something you can say about maybe your particular wine and the identities that they have?
Well, I can't speak too deeply about this, because I've tried a relatively small selection of wines from the other regions. But in the big blind tasting I did fairly recently, they came out really well. They looked really interesting. But more generally, I think it's a really good thing to have the names of the places where the grapes were grown on the label, even if it's too early for us to be able to say, well, that's going to mean it's going to taste a bit like this or taste a bit like that. I think it's just it's an extra level of detail, I think, that I think people will, you know, if they want to, they can find out more, because the information is there. They don't need to know what all these different subregions do to the wines. And I think because this hasn't been labeled in this way in the past, so obviously, I don't think we've had a lot of discussion about that. But I think this is almost like providing a framework or a structure for these discussions to have in the future. Because one day it might be fun to get, you know, a tasting together with 5 examples from this zone, 5 examples from this zone, 5 examples from that zone. And suddenly then you can start having the discussion, even though, as we know, with traditional methods sparkling wines, there are lots of things that affect the flavor after the grapes have been picked. Yeah,
and if we're thinking about Comtats de Barcelona and like the different sub-zones you have there, you know, how for the producers here for Caterina and Roger, what are the differences that you notice between the smaller sub-zones?
Hello. Well, thank you, Jamie, for also, I think I agree totally what we said. I think that all the people who work with wine and the wine lovers, the beauty is the diversity. I think this, even if the consumer doesn't understand exactly what is behind these labels, it's really nice that if they want, they can know a little bit more and help us when we're educating, saying something that people can, you know, go and identify. I think especially this differentiation, you can see more when you go to more premium, especially in Guarda Superior products, when you actually want to have all these, for instance, we have one, this like a single vineyard, no, Xarel·lo, you said about especially this zone of Comtat de Barcelona, Xarel·lo, it's known to be the noble grape and to give this particular style of this fennel, very fresh aroma that you cannot identify in other traditional method. When I do blind tastings, it's always what I look for. But of course, if they are from other regions, I will not, I cannot say it's a Cava, but I will know it's Cava from this region, this fennel, very fresh. That the Japanese really love this usually when we have tastings with them. I have this characteristic that is very identificative, but especially I think when you go from here with the wines and single vineyards that you want to express actually the terroir and the region, this is particular more evidence and gives us it's diverse and different.
Yeah, in our case, the same. And also just to add the influence and the important for us of the local grapes, the Xarel·lo, Macabeo, and Parellada. Finally, the oldest vineyards that we have planted here are from these three grapes. In our case, for example, we have some vineyards planted with Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. That is around 10% of the total production that we have. And as you know, the first Pinot Noir and the first Chardonnay that was planted here in Spain to make Cava was planted in the 90s or something like that. So we have the oldest vineyard that we can have in our properties around 33 years old, something like that. So finally, oldest vineyard like one Xarel·lo, for example, of 90 years old, the expression that have this Xarel·lo is totally different than a youngest vineyard, no? And finally, the identity of the region is for the grapes that we have. And for us, it's very important to work with the local grapes and to defend a lot these grapes because are more special, and we can make a most special products also. We will speak about the Paraje also in the next part of the meeting of today. But for the Paraje, for example, we will just work with Xarel·lo, Macabeo, and Parellada. So it's just the things that I want to add from this question.
Yeah, I think it leads on to the next question, which I was going to ask about sort of how important is it, because both of you have these in your portfolio, to have a Cava de Paraje Calificado in your range?
For us, in our case, it's super important because finally the Paraje is not just a category, is the vineyard, no? Finally, is the identification of the vineyard. The difference that, for example, have the Cava with the Paraje Calificado of Cava with the Gran Cru from France. The Gran Cru is a specific area from the region, a special, but it's like different vineyards that are around this area. The Paraje is just a qualification for a single vineyard, for just a single, very small area. In our case, we have the Paraje Camprats. And finally, is the identification of this vineyard, because in Camprats we have different vineyards. For example, we have vineyards that are close from Camprats, from the Paraje vineyards that was planted before and are not the same than this, no? And finally, the Paraje means the certification of this vineyard that needs to be special, have a special terroir, special characteristics, not a lot of production. Normally is practically nothing. We are making around 3,000 kilos per hectare in our Paraje. And finally, we get a better acidity, better maduration, more stable pH. And for us is the key to can identify this special vineyard and can sell with a special category, and that the people and the clients that wants to buy this bottle can know that this vineyard is special, no? Because it is not easy to get the Paraje. You need to do a study. You need 2-3 years or 4 to can get this. If the vineyard is special, if it's not, you cannot have it, no? And finally, for us, to have a product like this in our portfolio is very special. Right now, we are just 10 cavas, 6 wineries, but 10 products, I think, in total. So to have one of these products from us in the name of Paraje, for us is very important. and it's very unique, no? And for the, I think that the people needs to think like that a Paraje is a unique cava from a unique place with a special grapes also in the Paraje. So.
To add something, Roger, I think that's the what can really prove what is Cava de Paraje is we are neighbors. Our vineyards are next to each other, and if you taste our Cava de Paraje, they have a total different style and a very unique style. So this is what Paraje means. It's really, I think it's for a consumer or for wine lover that they really enjoy premium bubbles, sparkling wines, and they want something different. This will not be, if they never tasted this sparkling wine, they can never know what is inside, not even for the label. It will be something different. It will be an experience. To make a Cava de Paraje, we're very proud to be one of these 6 producers that have this, because this means that we really have high quality viticulture and high standards in winemaking. Also, it means that our winemaking team and viticulture, they know very well the land for many years, because to make this kind of wines, you really need to, because they know what to expect, from each corner. Even this, our Cava de Paraje, it's from half of one vineyard in Bush, and they know what to expect. So different style it's going to give to the wines. So for us, it's really nice to count in our portfolio, and we're very proud to be one of the producers that can give something to the world and to the wine lovers, that it's going to be total different experience for anything they could taste before.
I mean, it's great that I've only managed to taste a couple, and one was at your winery, Roger. And it's the rarity of them is something beautiful, but also we need there to be more at the same time, so that there's more availability, so that more people can taste it, because it's something else, isn't it? It's a really another unique level of cava. So it's, yeah, from my experience, I think it's a great thing to have as part of Cava DO wines. And the other label that people may remember seeing is the integral producer stamp. So you've both got that as well, one of only 16 producers, two of only 16 producers to have that. And so how important, or what made you apply for that stamp, and what's the benefits of having that on your wines?
For me, this part is more important than Paraje, because to be a labor integral means that you are making and controlling all the process, okay, and you are making all the wines that you will finally produce as a cava, and is a lot of important, because in our case we don't understand the cava without the viticulture before. In our case, we don't buy any grape from another viticultures, because we have more vineyards and more grapes than the grapes and vineyards that we need to make our cavas and our wines. So finally, we have the possibility of control all the steps in the vineyard, can get the best quality in the vineyard, in the grapes, and finally can always find the best grapes and the best quality grapes to make our cavas, and can control the steps, because finally if you have a year that, for example, the quality is not quite good because the weather or you had some problems, a lot of rains, mildew or something, maybe you lose more quantity. But the years that are good, you can know and you can control all the steps. And finally, when you buy the grapes, it's difficult to can know exactly how it's gonna to be this grape, and finally how is the quality. And when you don't know after you make it the wine. So finally, we can control all the steps in the vineyard and always know the best vineyards to make every product that we make. So to can put this in the label is important because it's not the same make your wines that buy the wines to make the cavas, no? Because finally, when you buy the wines, you can do the blend. It's not an easy thing to do the blend, but for me, the most important part is make your own wines. And with this stamp, finally, the consumer can knows that we finally finish the cycle, and we start in the vineyards and we finish in the bottle. And in France, for example, is like this. Everything is regulated, and now, for example, in the trade fairs, it's more easy to explain to the customers that we are elaboradores integrados because now we have this stamp. Before we had not, no. And finally, we are different. Sorry, we are different. We are just 15 right now, of more of 300 producers, I think, that are making cava. So we are specials, and we can say it. And it's real because it's certificated, and for us it's very important, very important. One of the most important things that Cava did in the last 10 years for us.
Hello. Well, of course, I agree with all that Roger says. I think it's very important for us because it helps us to explain how we do our wines. For the consumer, and also even for our clients, for importers, for distributors, it's a matter of credibility of the brand, and also it gives they can believe in the consistent of the products, because of course, if we do everything ourselves, the consistent of our products will be, it's certified. We are, as Roger said, 15 out of more than 200 that produce the cava, but I think more than that, it's differentiated as is in international markets. No, it's not about just the cava producers. It's actually a certification when we are side by side with other sparklings. They will know with this stamp. I think it's very important, and it's a good tool from the Biocava, and a very good initiative that really helps the person who holds the bottle to understand. Okay, so this actually the person who made this, they control from A to Z all the production, and it will be always like this in the next vintage, next year. So it's credibility and consistency, especially. So for us, we put it also, we communicate it. The only thing, if I have to say something bad about this, everything is good, is that the readability of that is hard, and I think we could improve on that. Even in Elaborador Integral, the translation, in integral producer, how do for English, I don't know, it doesn't sound easy in English. I think maybe we could work a little bit more. How could we communicate? I think the stamp is important. Maybe we could improve a little bit there on the logo and in the stamp, the readability.
Yeah, it doesn't roll off the tongue so easily, does it? And it's not very easy to translate and sound the same. I get where you're coming from with that. I think there's always going to be a slight consumer issue with wines from Cava wines, because as well we've got the place names too, which I think we struggle with a little bit, but the quality is there, so we'll keep buying. Sorry, Jamie, did you want to mention something there?
No, I think it's really important. I just love to see more producers doing it, because I don't think people I was quite shocked to find out there are 144 Cava producers who just buy base wines and don't touch any grapes, and I think I'm not saying you can't make good wines that way. It's just, the pressing stage is so important, in terms of quality, that you wouldn't want to leave it to someone else, it's like, so I think that's something that surprised me. So I'd like to see more producers using this, and maybe they could just drop the Elaborador and just call it Integral, because that's a kind of an easier, just a seal with a good logo with Integral on it would be kind of cool, I think, just because then it would translate to other markets much more easily. But I think that's certainly a really valid cue towards quality. And I think that's what we need. And that's why I like all these new labels in the back, because they are, if you're going to be Paraje Calificado, that's a massive cue towards quality. It's not just a box ticking exercise. It's like it's almost like a brand within itself, a collective brand that I think could be a guarantee of really very, that you're going to get something that's quite special. And I think Integral could be like that sort of brand as well, a shared brand, which doesn't mean it's going to be always great, but it's just helping people find the bottles much more easily that they think they're going to enjoy and will pay a little bit more for. And that's the thing. And because with all these things, ultimately, if you want farmers to farm better, you've got to pay more for the grapes and you've got to sell the wines for more. And this is you're bringing the whole region up, I think then enables everybody, every stage in the process to be financially sustainable as well as environmentally sustainable. And that's got to be the goal of all these changes, is improving the financial stability of the region. And with that, paying a little bit more so farmers can do the right thing in the vineyards.
And talking about quality, I think in the past when we've thought about quality and Cava, we've probably thought more about aging, and because there's a correlation here, clearly, isn't there, with our Guarda Superior and then the Paraje, and those wines needing to have had more aging. What do you think are the benefits for waiting longer before disgorging?
One of the most important things and the most easy to can feel when you taste a cava is with the bubbles. Finally, every year, every month that passes in the bottle, every month is more fine and more integrated. So the balance that have this sparkling, in this case, this cava is totally different. Okay, finally, also you have, after the 24 months, you get in 18, you can start having some aromas, but you get the autolysis. I don't know is exactly the same translation in English, but finally it can apport all the sensation of the lees that have contact all this time with the cava, all these lees integrated in the flavors of this cava. Every month that passes, it's going to be more complex. It's going to be, I think, a little bit better with evolution. But I always say that it's important that you can make a long-aged cava, but you need to have a good wine before. Because if the wine that you use, the base wine to make the cava is not good and have not enough power to can understand, finally you can wait a lot of years that this cava is not going to be better. If you want to keep this bottle a lot of years, you need to have, first of all, a good base wine, and after that the evolution is going to be longer and better. But always the aging depends of the quality of this base wine. Okay, so I think that normally this cavas needs to come from also an old vineyard or a special vineyard to be made. Okay. And we trust a lot with the Gran Reserva cava, and right now we are making more Gran Reserve cava than Reserve, for example, and we don't make any Guarda, no. So it's finally, I think that everyone have their style and the type of product that they want. So we bet for this style of cava, and we think that a special cava needs to be aged.
Thank you.
Well, in Camps, most of our portfolio is all Gran Reserva. Only 4 products out of more than 15 are not Gran Reserva, so it means more than 30 months. Basically, in a more simple way, the 2 main things that the long aging gives to a sparkling wine is a more fine bubble, more integrated, like Roger said. So it will be less aggressive. No, if you find a non-traditional or the opposite of a soda, no, that you have all the bubbles there. If you give them time, I usually say that the bubbles, non-traditional or just a normal soda they're like in the party, all going around. And if you go to traditional method and you look at them, it looks like a fashion show of bubbles. They're all, and with the right pace next to each other. It's just beautiful. For me, it's like watching, the fireplace. I just look at the bubbles. It's one of the things, not only in the mouth, but only in the visual part of the drink is also important, to have this, and it will be more fine. Also, it will give a more gastronomic profile. If the bubbles are more integrated and less aggressive, it will be much better to integrate with food. And we come to have all this gastronomic profile. We focus also in Brut Nature, zero dosage. Also, another thing that, as Roger is saying, okay, after 18 months is Reserva, but it's actually in the 24 months that the autolysis notes become more evident, even if they're very soft. Our Gran Reserva family has more than 36. The brioche, the honey, but not only the aromas, but also the texture will be different. But as he was saying, you need a good raw material, you need a good base wine. We do everything hand harvest. We do a lot of effort in the vineyard, in the viticulture. If you do all this, you will want that wine to show their best, and they will show their best with more aging. You want your sons to give more, to tell more stories, but of course you have to start from a good base wine.
Thank you. And we're going over a little bit over time. We've only got a couple of questions left, just to briefly go over. So just to put those out there. And I think you've probably already answered this to a point, but how important is it for you, Roger and Katerina, for the producers that you work for, that you put the zones where the wines are made on your labels? And what are the zones that you do put on, and if in the case that you do, which I think you both do?
Yeah, I think that I answered a little bit before, but for us it's super important because finally, that Cava, we have different areas, and it's not the same, the terroir, the weather, and the situation that we have here in Penedès that in Extremadura, that is in the south of Spain. So finally, to can identify every Cava and every style of Cava, you need to know from what is make it, and without this, you never can know exactly if this Cava, the grapes of this Cava was from Extremadura, from Requena, or from Penedès. Now it's perfectly put it in the label, and for me this is super important, because finally it's totally different. It's totally different. If you compare with another regions from the world, finally, normally the region identifies the style of the product, And here, because we have different diverse areas, we need to put it in the label. I don't know exactly. I don't know if you have the statistic, but I know that I don't know, maybe in the Comtats of Barcelona is the 90% of all the production. I don't know exactly these numbers. I'm just saying, but finally, it's not the same the Cava from here that from another parts from Spain. And it's important to have this in the label for us.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's at 95%. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would just add something that maybe was not said, because we talk about all the diversity of texture. For us, it's important also because, well, me and Roger as well, actually very similar in this, in a lot of points. Here in Penedès is where Cava was born, the history, the culture. So also this, also not only in the profile of the wines, but it shows also all the methods, all the technology that was developed. Is the origins of the Cava. I think it's the style that is the original, from the origin of Cava, and other regions are a different profile that's become maybe in a later phase, and so have different profile and a different history. That I was just would like to add is for us is important in school, because we are in the core of the history of the Cava and the main varieties, the technology, the techniques that developed the category, the Cavas.
Great, thank you. And just we've established the organic practice, but are either of you practicing anything biodynamic currently?
Yes, in our case, we are working by organic. We make the first biodynamic cava, I think, of the world, because we started the project in 2003. Never any one cava did some like similar than this in this period. So we start with the Paraje, Camprats, because we thought that was the most special vineyard to do it. And in 2006 we finished the process and to get the vineyard as certificated as a biodynamic, and we make it the first bottle. So I think that in 2008 or 9 we put it in the market. So now we are working around 15 hectares by biodynamic. You know that biodynamic is not an easy work because you need to do some specific works in the vineyard in the right moments. You just can do it in the right moment. So it's difficult to do it in a big property. Okay, in our case, finally, we decide to just work in the best vineyards that we have, the oldest vineyards that we thought that are most special because we know it, and the unique cava that we have to work it by biodynamic, 2 products right now, the Paraje, Calificado, and another one. But also for the single still wines that we are making in our winery, we have some that are biodynamic. But yes, I think that also is a good practice in the vineyards, because you can be part of the herd and a lot of things, no, and the energies that you have with the moon, because the moon have a lot of influence to our soil, to our energy, and yeah, we work by biodynamic. I don't know if Shubekams also have some vineyards by biodynamic.
Roger, finally we have something that is different. Otherwise it will be the same.
Yeah.
Well, as I was saying before, we don't have any biodynamic. We really believe, and what I was saying before, and Jamie was talking about, is the regenerative. It's difficult with viticulture, about all the work that we do in the vineyards, minimum intervention. Our objective, and our chief viticulture is my favorite person in all the company. He's so passionate about this. And Pep, I think Lauren or Jamie, you met them. It's our objective that our estate would be the same if we weren't farming, no? We had other plants, other animals, biodiversity friendly. We focus a lot on this preservation and ecosystem and having this balance. This is important for us to have, of course, the good wines, and at the same time having all this balance with all the landscape that surrounds us.
Thank you. It's very interesting to see the different practices, although fundamentally everyone's going towards the same. You guys in particular are aiming for the same thing, and that's that quality. And so just to kind of round this off, and I have a question for Jamie, really. I think, again, this has partly been answered, but if anyone has anything they want to add to it. But, you know, so we've got this category, this Guarda Superior, 100% organic. Do we think that this is going to contribute to category growth? The fact that we have this now, this particular category, do you think it's going to? Do you think that in category and the sales of that are going to go up? But do you also think that maybe it will have an effect on the rest of the DO?
I think it's a slow burn in some ways. This is thinking about the future. Immediately, it might cause the category to slow a little bit because in terms of the volume, because some people might say, well, going organic is just too hard for us. So maybe we'll release our cavas without doing Cava Guarda Superior. But I think in the long term, I think it's going to have an effect on perception, but also effect on quality. And I think you're sowing the seeds for then you'll reap the crop in maybe 5 to 10 years. It's always slow burn, I think, when you're doing something like this. It takes a while for the message to filter through. When you're dealing with a category, traditional method sparkling, any changes take place now, it's going to be a few years before you see them on the market. So in that sense, you've got to hold your nerve and be patient. And I think it will result in category growth. But more to the point that the category growth, it will result in category strengthening. Because I guess this is a category, you don't just want it to grow in terms of volume, you want it to grow it in terms of value. And in some ways, growing in value is more important than growing in volume, because it makes it a more sustainable thing. Then you might lose some, if you're taking the category as a whole and raising the quality, it's going to result in wines that are slightly more expensive. You might lose some sales at the bottom end, but that's at the end of the market that really isn't helping anybody. The very cheap covers, it's damaging the brand, and it's almost like you want to lose some of that stuff. I mean, it's almost like a historical artifact. You don't want people to be making distressed sales to supermarket buyers, and then it's their private label stuff. It's horrible, and it's £4.99 or £5.99. That's an area of the category I think that has to kind of almost stop a little bit, just for the benefit of the category as a whole.
Yeah, I think Cava has suffered from there being so much of that higher volume, and less complex, not such great quality on the market. And this is really hopefully going to give a good boost to Cava as a whole. And we have that more sort of halo effect in a way, particularly as we can now recognise that we've got a product that is not just quality, but also is coming from a place, and we can recognize the provenance, and we can recognize the the work that goes into this product as well. So I haven't got any further questions from our participants, but just if anyone wants to have any to learn anything more, we've got the Cava Academy website, where they've got lots of online courses you can do, and just full of information, as is the Cava DO website too. And if you do have any particular information that you would like, or maybe there are other ideas for webinars that you have, you can contact the real Rebecca Wilson on rwilson@sopexa.com. And it's been our pleasure to talk about this today. Definitely has been mine, and I can't say thank you enough to Dr Jamie Goode, Roger Canals and Caterina Soares for their participation today. It's been enlightening, so thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much for the invitation, and we like to be here in events like this or webinars like this, so it's a pleasure for me and for InsalSep.
And thank you to Rebecca at Sopexa as well for helping put this all together. And yeah, so hopefully we'll see you again for more Cava information. And yeah, and if you are interested, which I'm sure you are, that's why you're here, see if you can go out and get some of these wines and really enjoy them, because that's what it's all about, really. So yeah, thanks again to everyone, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Bye. Thank you.